back, everybody. My name is Brenden. This is Daniel, and this is the Jersey Number Runners. Today is a Sunday morning. Baseball's back. Still waiting to see where the major free agents signed. A little bit slow over takeoff than I think both of us have thought, but what has become very apparent to us the last couple of days, fantasy baseball season is upon us, and it's going to be upon us really soon here. So we are some fantasy baseball, fantasy sports in general, nuts. I hoisted a fantasy football trophy this year, scrape on the shoulder there. We've had a first place finish between the two of us in the last 4 years for fantasy baseball. We play on Yahoo, so the platform that we prefer. I mean, the ESPN points leagues, I've seen them. Maybe there's some interest there. Maybe that's something we'll take a shot at this year, if that is down the road. But I think stick to the bread and butter. This is what we do, and we're gonna do a mock draft for you guys today. It's the season's upon us, Daniel. What do you say?
Yeah, today's the first day of spring training officially in terms of 40-man rosters reporting. So yeah, it's here. And before you know it, fantasy draft rooms are going to be filled up, and if you wait too long, you may miss out on getting certain sleepers who you knew about, and now everybody does. I think knowing your inside baseball is important, and I think if I have to choose between drafting early or later in spring, if I have to pick one, I would always go early, because I feel like by the time spring is wrapping up and people are heading north, people know who some of the diamonds in the rough are.
It's a difficult question, man. Honestly, I think it's something that you and I have gone back and forth with. I don't know if there's a right answer. I think, as we've gotten into this and as we've played, as the time has gone by, my initial, especially for football, I mean, preseason football injuries are a little bit different in that sport, but even baseball, I mean, I would always used to prefer to wait until like the day before the season, just because you'd hate to. Eloy Jimenez is a perfect example last year. You'd hate to draft that guy. 3 games left in spring training or whatever, guy tears his pec, almost misses the whole season. So, but me and Daniel, I mean, we've discussed it as time has moved on here. I think there's advantages at every single point of the time now. I mean, if you draft early, you run the risk of injury, but like you said, I mean, there's guys that, if you know baseball, you'll snag them early. And if they have a great spring training, maybe they're on the radar when it comes time right before the season starts. So, yeah, it's tough. You tell me if I had to pick one or the other.
Here's what I would say, Brenden. If your draft has already taken place and your rosters are set, and then guess what? Some new guy comes on the radar, those pop-up guys. Hey, waiver wire's open.
That's fair.
You could always make that move and get that additional player that maybe, you were hesitant on, or you weren't sure, but you got off to a slow spring, but then, he picked it up. Look, there's risk to everything. Injury can happen anytime. But if I have the advantage of taking my knowledge and beating other people to the punch, I think it's worth the risk of injury. For the most part, what happened to Eloy was a fluky. Don't get me wrong. I mean, being a Braves fan, Chipper Jones missed his rookie year, tore his ACL in spring training, missed his entire first season as a major leaguer because of a play sliding into second base. Spring training game, ACL, done. So, it can happen. It can happen. I just think for the most part, those kind of devastating injuries are few and far between. And I think if you can hop, you can hop. But at the same time, sometimes you need the time in spring to know, hey, is this guy really worth it? So
yeah, I mean,
there's a bit of Brenden and Danyal.
So yeah, how much credit do you give the spring numbers, right? Too. I mean, I remember Yasiel Puig 3 years ago hit 400 in spring with like 10 home runs.
Yeah,
guy hit 219 on the season. You know what I mean? So.
Well, look at Christian Yelich last year, right? I literally drafted him because Yahoo said, "Look, you can't afford to pass on this guy," and his numbers made it look like you can't afford to pass on this guy. And he sat on my bench, man. He rode the bench. I never had the heart to cut him. I couldn't trade him for value, even though I should have.
I was a yellow shoulder too, man. I was right there with you.
Yeah, no. I remember 2 years ago we played. You played. We both did head to head, and every week it was like, whose turn is it to get Yeliched?
Yeah,
Right?
that was the term that came about. That's
Yep.
right.
Who's gonna get Yeliched this week? And yeah, I
Juice
think you had a week
ball.
where he hit what, like 9 home runs. It felt like
Nine
probably
home.
7.
It was nine home
Was it
runs
9?
against me.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
believe it. I believe it. He
And that
yeah,
guy had Cody Bellinger on his team as well.
right. He
Yes.
couldn't get out.
It's juice ball era. Those guys were just slapping it around, man.
Oh man. Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, folks, so we're going to be doing a live standard draft. This is it means it's not an auction. It's a snake, 1 through 12,
Mhm.
and it runs forward and then backwards. And this is primarily what people do. I think you and I are both in the agreement that auction is the better way to go.
Mhm.
There are advantages and disadvantages to both, but we're going to start out with a snake draft just to get you familiar with the platform. Again, we use Yahoo, the players, and kind of what the board looks like, and maybe some common ways to approach it. And then we can get into more complicated auction strategies. But Brenden, I mean, why don't you start with your basic view of a snake draft and your basic plan of attack? Because folks, that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Before I turn it over to you, Brenden, I'll just leave people with the Mike Tyson quote. Everybody's got a plan until they get hit. You can have a plan, but you're going to see whatever Brenden says is his plan. It's not going to go accordingly. You got to be able to improvise. You got to be able to adapt because something's going to happen, particularly in a snake draft. You can't buy who you want, which is one of the advantages to auction. But anyway, go ahead, Brenden.
Yeah, I mean, and you guys will find out as we move forward here. In all fantasy sports, I'm a big auction guy. I think just in general, I think when it comes to a snake draft, I think it's important to do both. I think that in an auction draft, there's just certain guys that you would never touch with your own personal biases that still are valuable and have valuable to the team. But with a snake draft, I personally believe that you kind of get pigeonholed into a certain kind of like, there's a certain level of options that will come with each pick. So if you have the first pick, you're going to have a certain way the board is going to fall to you every time. But yeah, I think for this one, it's good that we both kind of chose picks in the middle of the draft. I think there's a value to that. You can't just bank on getting the number 1 or 12. Those are probably the two best spots to pick. But yeah, I'm gonna go offense this time, Daniel. I mean, I think I'm a big believer in offense, especially with the top pick. I think there's guys that just do all 5 categories, and we'll see here. I mean, it's underway. So
Well, yeah, look, folks, Brenden and I came up with a strategy a few years ago. Basically, real simple: bats and bullpen. You draft a lot of bats and you draft a killer bullpen. If you have closers,
you're on the
elite
board. You're on
ones.
the board, bud.
Oh, I see it. I see it. But I just want people to know those essentially are the two main ways to go about it: attack offense and attack relieving. And you should be able to cover 7 to 8 categories. But I'm not going offense this draft. I'm going starting pitching.
Wow,
And I'll talk about that later as we go.
it's bold, man. Corbin Burns. Yeah, I remember you were saying that.
Well, listen, for my money, he is the best starting pitcher in baseball right now for fantasy purposes. I don't know how I wonder about his innings, but I do think a year removed now fully from the COVID shortened season, the Brewers are not going to put him on a 6-man rotation. Folks, that's something to be aware of. He was on last year. This year, he should have the reins taken off him a little bit. So,
See, I'll be interested to see that, though. I don't know if that was more so of an organizational philosophy or because they were transferring him from the bullpen. It might be an organizational philosophy.
No, he was fully in the rotation the year before during the COVID year, and he was excellent as well. So who did you take, Brenden? I missed it. What pick did you have?
The great Mike Trout.
Okay, so what pick was that? That was number
pick 8 is what I had.
8. So you had 8 and I had 7. Okay, so there we were. Right, there we were. Yeah, folks, if I chose to go bats and bullpen again, we will elaborate on exactly the intricacies of that strategy. I would have gone Ronald Acuna, but because he's like that 5 category player Brenden just mentioned, will give you everything. I can imagine Brenden probably demurred on him because of the injury factor, right?
Yes. I do think I'm a fan of the Mike Trout bounce back.
I agree. All right, Brenden. So you're going to see with this second pick.
It's a tough decision, man.
That I'm about to have. Well, it's not, because right now, in my opinion, I have the two best starting pitchers in baseball: Corbin Burnes and Walker Buehler. That is back-to-back double barrel action right there.
And I mean, you can see the clear at this point with the way that the snake has played out. I mean, for me, that was a tough choice too. Shohei Ohtani or Freddie Freeman. Oh, that's as tough as it gets, dude. I mean, that's as tough as it gets. I mean, I'm a big Shohei guy. I had Shohei carried me last season. I had on a couple of different teams, and I mean, I'm a huge fan. But I just think that assuming Freddie Freeman goes back to Atlanta, which
let's assume.
My man loses sleep over every night. I just think having him and Mike Trout in my lineup, average is going to be a given.
Yep. Totally.
It's just, it's going to be, that's the foundation of my team. I mean, there's really just no box besides stolen bases on the offensive side of the ball that's unchecked right now, in my opinion. So we're going to try to flesh that out. And I think that as far as my team is concerned, the only thing I'll have to address is stolen bases, whereas on your side of the baseball is going to be saves, obviously. Because if you're going to be going for pitching, and I'm going to be going for offense.
Exactly. No starting pitcher. That is one of the advantages going bats, folks, is that you can draft a player who's going to give you all 5 categories. You can't do that on the pitching side of the board. It doesn't exist. Starting pitcher is not going to give you saves. So it makes going after the bag, going after the gold, in some ways, almost a little simpler, a little more obvious. Like, why wouldn't you go offense if I can go get a guy who's going to give me 5 categories? But we will get into that a little further down the line, why I think starting pitching was a way to go. So I basically, at this point, Shane Bieber's gone. Right before I went, he would have been my pick, right? He would have been, to me, the obvious pick. He's not there. So do I go and get, in my view, the next best starting pitcher on the board, Lucas Giolito? I don't know if Lucas Giolito really is a 3rd-round pick. In my view, he's not. At some point, I got to get bats. I'm going to go get the best catcher on the board, clear cut, head and shoulders above Salvador Perez.
That's your boy right there.
He's my boy.
And I don't blame you.
My boy.
I don't blame you one bit.
Yeah, and I'll say this about Perez. You don't need a backup catcher. The guy's going to play virtually 162 because of the DH and because he's built like a tank. So bearing significant injury, which can happen to anybody, and it can happen to a catcher a bit more because of foul balls and the beating they take. This guy, though, is an ox. So for my money, he gives me a spot filled for every single game.
And he gives you a competitive advantage. I mean, the reality is their catcher's a relatively shallow position.
Absolutely.
I think even more so this year, actually, the more I was looking at the board, I do think there's more options to play with, but still, comparatively to a position like third base, I mean, shortstop, there's
the man.
You get Dansby Swanson in the 15th round. He's a serviceable player.
Right. Last thing I'll say about Perez. Remember, folks, he surpassed Johnny Bench as the all-time or single-season home run record holder for catchers. When you surpass Johnny Bench, I mean, you're pretty good. So
I'm a Tigers fan, man. I've seen it year after year after year, and there was a point in the season last year where right as we were approaching the trade deadline, Daniel and me, we were having phone calls and like, oh, what to do. So, dude, go get Salvador Perez. My man pulled the trigger for it and won a championship or a placement. I forget.
Second place. I came second place to you. You came first in that league. That was an auction league. Yeah, finished just behind you. Third place because I got a little careless with my bullpen, which I'm never doing again. But by the way, I saw you addressed steals. You got Tim Anderson.
Have to, man. I mean, going with the trend of average, that's going to be my calling card in this one, it seems like. I mean, again, Tim Anderson we love Tim Anderson on the show. He checks off all the boxes for us. He's just a phenomenal athlete. He does everything that you could ask for. So this one is it's more of a tougher pick because I was going to pick Wander Franco. So you really have to take a look at the board here.
I lost Bieber and you lost Franco. That's the way it goes, folks. That doesn't happen in auction. Nobody's going to steal your pick right before you. That's one of the differences. If this was auction, I would have Shane Bieber as my 3rd starting pitcher, but I don't. All right, so you just took the best closer off the board, Josh.
Interesting pivot, yeah.
So that, folks, again, I need to continue my pattern of starting pitching if that's what I'm committed to.
Got to take
Bobby
it.
Ray, from my view, is the best starting pitcher on the board right now, the American League Cy Young winner. His average pick is about 10 picks later. Would I like to go get another elite bat? I would. But if I don't get Ray, he's not going to be there. And those elite starting pitchers who I trust giving the ball to, they're not going to be there either. So you have to commit. If you commit to starting pitching, you cannot say, oh, I'll go get the rest of my rotation later. Doesn't work like that. You got to go get your guys immediately.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I was looking at the board offensively, and there are some players there that obviously catch my attention. Dolan Arenado is one. George Springer's another. I'm a big believer in the bounce back. But just for that draft position that I was going in right there, to me, it just felt like I have to address the closer position. You know, that's something that you'll find out about me. I don't mess around with it.
Yep.
And Hader versus Hendricks is a very interesting question to me. I almost would have picked Hendricks right there. But, you know, I think it's 1A, 1B. Josh Hader's good for it, man. I think he's going to be totally fine. I do think that Hendricks will get more saves. And if this is a real draft and this is a learning moment for me based off this draft, I probably would go Hendricks is my relief pitcher one, to be honest with you. I just think that the White Sox are head and shoulders above the Brewers. But at the same time, you could make the argument that the Brewers pitching is so good, they're going to be in close games every single night. So it comes down to whether or not they're going to be able to hit offensively. So again, 1A, 1B, I'm not disappointed with the pick at all.
Right. Absolutely. No, I agree. I think if you're doing that bats and bullpen strategy, which, as we said at the beginning of the show, is something Brenden and I came up with. It's a, you know, don't want to say foolproof, but it's a tried and tested, safe way to go about it. Unless you have significant injuries, just disasters, which Brenden had last year. It is a darn good way because you can cover the most amount of categories, and there is a kind of, if you have the right closers, I mean, there's a security and predictability about it with guys like Hader and Hendricks. So now I'm on the board. I need to go get another starting pitcher. Max Fried's my guy, folks. To me, I mean, he's my favorite pitcher in baseball. They have him average draft position just under 70. I took him at 55. I cannot run the risk of saying I'll get him on the swing around, because the fact is, starting pitchers, folks, they are the running backs, as Yahoo in an article put it, of fantasy baseball. Running backs in football are gold, so are starting pitchers. There are fewer and fewer elite ones who will give you innings and will give you 4 categories at an elite level. Again, if you have a guy, you cannot have, you don't have the luxury of saying he'll be there when I expect him to be there. You have to get him when you can get him. And to me, Max Fried at 55, 15 slots ahead of his average draft pick, I'm taking him.
No, I mean, it's, you know, that's your guy. Look, Fried's numbers are incredible. The Braves, when they re-sign Freeman, I'm sure that we'll see if Anthopoulos has the guts to finally make a statement move on the offensive side of the ball, you know, or the bullpen for that matter. I mean, maybe shore that thing up. It was incredible and arguably won them the World Series. Whether that's a problem, we'll see. But Fried will get wins. That's something
absolutely.
From a starting pitching standpoint, he will churn out.
He was the best pitcher in baseball in the second half last year. Not up for discussion. We saw what he did in the postseason. He won that game for the Braves, game 6 shutout innings, could have gone 7 or 8 innings. He was in complete control. For me, he's the kind of guy who's scratching the surface of his potential. He's a Tommy John pitcher. His career got derailed by 2 years because of injury. So he's somebody who's still figuring out how good he can be. If I can get him as my 4th starting pitcher, you're in business, folks. Yeah. And you can because people don't realize how good he is.
Yeah, at this point, I mean, the one benefit of this draft is this is a real room with real people. But
yes, it is.
I've seen it. Yeah, like I've seen
not
it
a single person's left.
No, and we'll see. I mean, my initial pick so my last pick was George Springer.
I saw that.
So my initial pick was going to be Javier Baez to address the steals on my team without sacrificing too much power, but he was gone 2 picks before my draft. So
there you go. Right. I was going to ask you, why not Baez?
So, but you know, I think George Springer, I mean, we got to see it a little bit last year. the reality is the Toronto Blue Jays are just scary, man. That is a scary, scary, scary team. There was a point of the season where that man was just going on a tear. Dude, that was my pick again, Mondesi, because I was going to immediately pivot to addressing the steals. And I don't know if there's a relief pitcher that would warrant a pick right now, to be honest with you. I mean, that could be debated. I mean, that could definitely be debated. But I think what I'm going to have to do here.
I mean, Iglesias is the best one on the board. The question is he worth getting right now?
That's a huge gamble. That's a huge gamble.
So why did you take Yelich?
I do think he will steal 25 bases this year.
Yeah.
I think that Yelich is going to do a lot of things. And my whole thing with that pick, I was between him or Tyler O'Neill. Mm-hmm. I think Tyler O'Neill is coming into his own. I had him on my team last year. And the reality is Jazz Chisholm was also a name that was on the board that I liked. But, dude, even if Yelich hits 250, gives me 20 home runs. The way my team build is right now, George Springer does not steal. He may get 5. Mike Trout may chip in 10. Freddie Freeman doesn't steal. Tim Anderson is the only person on my team that has steals. And my identity is offense.
Well, real quick on my boy Freeman. Remember, he did steal 8 bases. So, you know, let's say he gives you 5. Yahoo has at 5. But for the most part, yes, you're right. I can see why you did this.
I would have chose Mondesi, but I do think Yelich is going to be good for some steals.
Was there somebody else on the board beyond Yelich that were you debating someone else, or was Yelich to you just the obvious pick there?
Tyler O'Neill and Jazz Chisholm. Those were the 2 names on the board that I was competing with that would get you steals. Again, it's a huge risk. I know I got burned by Yelich last year. You got burned by Yelich this year. The Brewers' offense is garbage. There's not going to be much for him to do. But the reality is the Cubs can't pitch. I mean, the Cardinals, they're going to be better this year, especially on the pitching side of things, in my opinion. So
I agree.
But I do think that he's going to just slap around some Cubs pitching. Dude, his ceiling is there. We've seen what the ceiling is. We've seen what the floor is now. I think this year he's going to finish somewhere in the middle. If I'm going to be honest with you, I don't love the pick. That's one of those snake picks that you just kind of get forced into. But I think he's going to help the team, honestly.
So you are buying the bounce back essentially.
I think that if we saw the ceiling, which is MVP Christian Yelich,
sure.
If we saw the floor, which was last year, but again, you could make the argument injuries there. As long as he finishes somewhere in the middle, I do think the pick value that I just chose him with, that pick 60 something or whatever it was, will hold based on what his production will come.
His back doesn't scare you?
It does. It does a little bit, but the offseason's a long time, man. And I'm gonna have to hope that he got that addressed in the offseason. You know.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. All right, folks. So my pick was just taken. Rafael Iglesias. He was the best closer left on the board. I have to address relief pitching. Mm-hmm. I'm taking him 15 picks from his average, but I have to go get Ryan Presley. I don't have a choice. I would have liked to take in Iglesias. Ideally, I'd like to get another bat. Can't do it because, again, as you probably know, or if you don't know, closers are in some ways even more rare than starting pitchers.
And again, I totally agree.
If you want to compete in saves, you got to get it, folks. You can't wait. But no, you pick somebody you needed. I was going to say,
that's the reality is, again, I mean, I'm not in love with the pick. Like, if I have to grade the pick, it's definitely not an A. But I look at the board and I'm going against all my inner feelings here, which is, I'm denying relief pitching. But I'm not an Edwin Diaz guy. I'm just not, dude. It's not what I am,
Well, he lost his job last year for a while. I mean, he's going to do that. To our Mets fans out there, you know what we're talking about. I mean, you have to, pop a Pepsi every time he takes them out. So
yeah. So I mean, we'll see where it goes, man. I mean, I just think that at this point, I need to build an identity, and that's that I'm going to come for all 5 offensive categories when you play me. That's what it has to be at this point.
Right. Yeah. That's a great pick there at 88 for this guy, Simon, taking Charlie Morton. For folks, if you don't know, Charlie Morton broke his leg. He is healthy. He is pitching right now. He's been working out at a high school, pitching simulated games. I keep my ear to the ground on everything Atlanta Braves, as you know. And if you can snag Morton, early 90s, high 80s. I mean, it's a hell of a pick. So you took Corey Seager, huh? Good
Best
pick.
player on the board, man.
Yeah,
That's the bottom line.
he's not gonna steal, but he's gonna hit. He's gonna hit a lot, especially with that revamped lineup. I like it. I like it. I like it. All right, folks, I'm on the board. I got to go get another closer. Brenden mentioned Edwin Diaz. Best one on the board is Kenley Jansen, closer for the Los Angeles Dodgers. If you don't know, he's a free agent. The word is he's going to be re-signing with the Dodgers in the next few days. He had a great year, throws one pitch for the most part, cutter, but nobody can hit it. So he gets the job done.
Finally appears that you might be on the Kenny train, dude.
Yeah, well, because, he had that rough year a couple of years ago and, velocity kind of left him, but it came back last year. And no, I had him last year on the team, and he was darn good. And look, when you're the closer for the Dodgers, I mean, they have him projected for 35 saves. I mean, he saved 38 last year. I mean, with the two guys I have, folks, for the Astros and for the Dodgers, you're going to get saved. So if you could get a closer for a division winner, I mean, you do it. You do it. I have no hesitation on taking Jansen. But Brenden, let me ask you something.
Yeah.
We're both going, obviously, we're going at the draft a little differently. You're going offense, I'm going pitching. We're both trying to be competitive, if not win, the saves category, at least finish in the top 3. We've had this conversation. How many closers do you think you need? Like real closers?
You need a few, man. You need a
How
few.
many?
I think 4. That's my honest opinion. And I mean, the reality is the way that this draft is panning out, I wouldn't be scared on the offensive side of the ball or the pitching side of the ball. But again, with the snake draft, I mean, there's only so much that you can do. You know what I mean? And when the reality is when a guy like Corey Seager's sitting there,
absolutely,
that late in the draft, and I already have Freddie Freeman, I already have Mike Trout. I'm a big Corey Seager guy. I think he's going to hit around 300. I'm me and Daniel, you'll hear us say this very often. You just have to come out of these types of drafts with an identity.
Absolutely.
And that's the reality of what I had to do. And we'll see, man. I'm gonna have to dice up this pitching here soon. It's gonna have to be addressed. But there's also, in my opinion, a glaring hole at third base on my team. And I don't know. I'm gonna have to see the third baseman's left.
Well, yeah, third base is a very thin position where once you get past Nolan Arenado, who's maybe like, that most draft boards have him as the third or fourth best option, depending on how you view Bregman. Everything is a question mark. Like, I love Justin Turner, but he's going to be either 37 or 38. He was a little banged up last year. Second half was not very good. His postseason wasn't great. Josh Donaldson, I'm a fan, but how many games is he going to give you? Right? Is he going to hit better than 250, or do you just live with 250 and say that's enough if he can pop me 25 plus? Every third baseman after Arenado, for the most part, and Bregman, and they're question marks. So it is a thin position for sure.
Yeah.
It's a thin position for sure. So here we go. We're at number 101. So Bryant's an option. He's not spectacular anymore, but I'd be okay riding Chris Bryant.
We've had a discussion on this guy. I mean, I think Anthony Rendon is someone that makes a ton of sense. I think he's due for a bounce back, but I think I need pitching more than that pick right there.
Is he still on the board, Brenden?
Yes, he's the highest player on the board right now, but I think I need pitching. I really do.
All right. Well, with pitching, folks, I'm going pitching. I'm taking my man, Jekyll and Hyde pitcher Will Smith for the Atlanta Braves. If he wasn't brilliant in the postseason, folks, and when I say brilliant, he did not give up a single run from the division series through the World Series. All us Braves fans, we used to be on edge every time the man came in to the game. That postseason, I think, won over a lot of critics, including myself. He showed what he's capable of doing. Again, like the Dodgers, pitching for a division leader, division winner. Right now, folks, with 3 closers, I've got over 100 saves. And Brenden, how many saves do you think you really need to win if you want to win saves? What's the number we've generally come to the conclusion of? About 110?
Yeah. Like, I was going to say 105, but if you really want to win it, you need more than that. It's the bottom line.
Yeah.
So dude, I went off script, man. I mean, the reality is,
Wow, Rodon.
yeah, I
Like
mean,
it.
I think I kind of got, and we've always talked about this in the Snakes, how fast the true closers go. I think I'm gonna caught in no man's land here, bud. And
So okay,
yeah,
explain that to people. Getting caught in no man's land.
yeah. I mean, I told Daniel, me and Daniel, we were discussing this last year, and he was like, doing the mock drafts and stuff like that, snagging closers at pick 180 last season, and he wasn't pressed on it when the real draft came around. And sure enough, pick 100 rolls around. He pulls up the relief pitching board and he tells me, he's like, dude, it's fucking barren. There is nothing left. There is nothing left that either warrants this pick or really is of value. And I think out of all the positions in baseball, that especially from a fantasy standpoint where that can happen to you, it's relief pitching. Would you agree with that?
I agree. Like I said,
Yeah.
starting pitching, they are the running backs in the sense that they give you the most value at in terms of a premium position that's rare. But while a closer isn't going to give you as much value, they are even more rare than starting pitchers because just so many teams have gone to a bullpen by committee. So many teams have closers that are essentially, stopgaps until somebody else takes the job from them, which happens a lot. There are very few guys, Brenden, like you said, who are going to be there again and again and again. Wow, you really went with an interesting pick. Shane McClanahan. Interesting. Tell us about that.
I mean, again, I think, a lot of this is going to come down to forecasting, a bounce back or a certain utility. So, I mean, whether or not we can gear this draft for a head-to-head or a rotisserie, that's could obviously be, since this is a mock draft. If we're going to say it's from a rotisserie standpoint, I think Rodon moving out to San Francisco is greatly going to help his value. Whether or not he can stay healthy, that's really the only red flag this guy has at this point, or his stamina moving forward. Dude, I've seen Shane McClanahan pitch a lot. It does it scare me the division he's in with the Yankees, with the Blue Jays, with the Red Sox? Absolutely. Absolutely it does. But dude, this guy is gonna give me a lot of strikeouts. I mean, you see his Ks per nine, they're up there, dude. And I think the Rays are a really, really good baseball team. I mean, I'm gonna have some real tough decisions to make if we're gonna say that this is a rotisserie league, whether or not to start and sit him in the regular season. Again, I don't love the pick, but I think I'm just stuck here in no man's land, and I got to do what I got to do. And I think that they're going to kind of take the reins off him a little bit, and the guy is is filthy. I mean, what's your honest opinion of the pick?
What was his average draft pick right now, McClanahan?
It was right there, man. He was top of the board.
It was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, look, he's got nasty stuff. He showed it. He really showed it down the stretch. I think he's somebody who's got a lot of upside. And you can't just play safe with these drafts. If you have a guy who you think is being undervalued and you're like, this guy is gonna get it this year, and he's there, you go get him, because I bet you somebody else sees that too. And eventually they'll get him. So if you don't, you will miss out. So no, I think it's a good pick, Brenden. Especially like you said, you're improvising right now.
I don't love the pick, man. If I'm going to be completely honest with you, I do not love the pick. But the reality is, yeah, it's like you said. I mean, occasionally especially at this stage of the draft, man, I'm all about really throwing the dart at it. You know what I mean? Like, hey, this is a really high risk, really high reward pick.
Wow, my pick just went again, folks. Justin Verlander. I had him pegged, and I guess there you go. See, somebody else did as well. I was just talking about that. Somebody's going to see and snag him right there. And that is what happens. I mean, that is just the way this draft goes, folks. And that's the snake. Well, I was talking about third base being a shallow position. Here you go. Here's one of those guys who's kind of on the border for me. He's a professional hitter, Justin Turner. I love him. Question's going to be, can he get it done at his age? But he plays in a great lineup. And so far, look, he has yet to prove any of his critics right. So if I can get him at, where do I get him? Pick 127, I'll take him. Now you're on the clock, Moncada. So there you go. You're going with another third baseman. Yeah, Moncada, I think, has a lot of upside. No doubt about it.
It's an interesting team that I wouldn't expect to come out of this, but that's what the snake draft will give you at the end of the day,
Right.
If I'm being honest with you, I don't have too many concerns on the offensive side of the baseball. I would love some more steal. I would love some more steals there. But pitching, man, it's
Well, yeah, I mean, so that's the thing, right? That's the other half of the strategy, right? Bats and bullpen. At this point, you have one closer, and that he is the best closer in baseball, arguably, Josh Hader.
yeah.
But it's one closer, and at this point, I feel you've got to get somebody in the bullpen if you want to be competitive for saves. The question is Mark Melanson worth it?
I think the question more so becomes, does being competitive in saves even make sense?
Right.
I think that's really, at this point of the draft, that's the question that I'm kind of going back and forth between. So, I mean, that's an interesting pick right there.
Michael Kopech, I like it. No, I like it a lot. I do.
Yeah, Daniel knows my philosophy when it comes to pitchers. I mean, that's just, I take stuff. If I see the guy and he's throwing 100 and the slider's there, sign me up, man.
Right.
And yeah, I would love to go offense there. I mean, there's some names on the board. Jake Cronenworth is definitely a name that jumps off the page to me.
Right.
I love Jake Cronenworth. I'm a big Jake Cronenworth guy. Dansby Swanson, there you go. Your guy that you just took. I mean,
absolutely.
But I just need pitching more than I need offense right now at this point, dude.
No, I agree.
Yeah, and I think the philosophy at this point becomes, for me, now that saves is really kind of off the board to a certain extent. I think I'll address that later in the draft. There's still some names that are interesting there.
There are.
But yeah, I think instead of it be going like you're going first place for ERA, WHIP, saves, just trying to finish sixth place across the board.
For your team, yeah.
Yeah, like middle of the pack, just across everything. Have a phenomenal team on offense. That's really what it comes down to for me, I think, at this point.
Right. Yeah, no, at this point, you have to make sure you're finishing first or second in all 5 of those offensive categories, ideally. Stolen bases right now, I mean, I don't think that's quite where you want to be.
No,
yeah.
Mark.
Well, look, and that's the thing, folks.
Left,
that look, these drafts are to be as much educational as anything, right? Because you're going to learn what can go wrong, right? Mm-hmm. And how to go about it the next time, so that maybe you don't get stuck in no man's land, or you have a closer team to what you envisioned than maybe what you ended up with. Because like I said, you're going to have a plan, and in a snake draft, I can promise you, more so than in a auction draft, that plan's not going to go swimming. You may get certain elements of what you were looking for, but for the most part, there are going to be a lot of alterations, and you got to be able to roll with that. And Brendan's having to figure that out right now. I mean, it happens to everybody.
Yep.
Let's see. Look, I'll say for the most part, for my team so far, it's looking like how I envisioned it. I'm on the board right now. I need a first baseman. I'm going to take Joey Votto. Folks, if you're looking for a first baseman later in the draft who's going to give you a ton of value, especially for his draft position, for my money, I think Joey Votto is the smartest hitter in Major League Baseball right now. This guy he retired today. He's going to the Hall of Fame. He knows how to swing the stick, and he knows how to reinvent himself. He put up his best slugging percentage last year in the last 4, I think. He's more upright in the box now, and he's less concerned with average and more concerned with putting it over the fence, and he did it. And that Cincinnati Reds lineup, even though they're going to miss Castellanos, it's a good lineup, Brendan, and it's a hitter's park. So for my money, Votto is a great pick. Who'd you go with there?
Jared Kelenic, dude.
Okay,
yeah,
there you go. That's another upside guy.
The one thing about him is that really isn't in questions is athleticism and speed. And I need the stolen bases right now. I have an open utility spot, and I think he's a guy that can play every day. And then Shane Baz, again, upside.
Great. Yep.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Brendan went with the spring chicken. I'm going with the old warhorse, an original Atlanta Braves draft pick. Uncle Charlie himself, Adam Wainwright. At his age last year, I forget what it was, 37 or 38. And he was just brilliant, Brendan.
He's 39.
39. I couldn't care less. Yeah. He went into Dodger Stadium, folks, in that wild card game and shut out the Dodgers for 8 innings. I mean, it tells you the guy knows how to pitch. And with that lineup that he's going to be going behind, he's going to win a lot of games again, Brendan. So if I can get him as my 5th starter, Hey, all day.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it makes sense, dude.
Unless this is the year time catches up with it. That's the thing, right? That's the thing. For a guy like Shane Baz, it could be growing pains his sophomore year, or essentially still his rookie year. For Adam Wainwright, it could be end of the line, right? So there are risks in going with a guy really young or going with a guy really old. But you got to go with your guy at the end of the day if that's what you believe in.
Yeah, definitely.
So I need one more starting pitcher.
I need a lot. I need a lot.
Yeah. So you're fully transitioning over at this point, yeah?
We'll see, man. I don't know. There's some good offensive players lots on the board. I mean, I definitely need a catcher.
Yeah.
But I mean, it really comes down to at this point of the draft, really what you were building. I think we should have outlined that prior to the start. You know, what this draft would have been, because I would approach a head-to-head draft a lot differently than I would have rotisserie at this point. I'll say that. That's where the strategy would clearly deviate, because in rotisserie, those games played are so valuable. You know, like at this point, you know, you can't have guys on the bench just slotting in and out. That's how you, at the end of the day, that's how you mess yourself up, you know, at the end of trying to like delegate games played and stuff like that. But
right, absolutely.
Dang, man, draft is messing up.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
We'll see, man. Am I on the board yet?
I'm on the board. Yeah, no, listen, the offensive players are going, Brenden.
Yeah, they are.
They are going. I can tell you that.
AJ Pollock, great pick.
Great pick, folks. Let me tell you something. AJ Pollock, if you can get this guy, you grab him. He had a great season for the Dodgers. He was healthy. He had a great postseason. Beat the crap out of my Braves. I can tell you that from firsthand experience. He's going really late in the draft. I took him at 175. He's going at 210. If you can snag him, snag him. What was your pick?
Craig Kimbrell.
Okay.
So, interesting pick. I mean, I think he could get traded out of Chicago. And I'm basically.
At some point, I can see it. Yeah.
You know.
Definitely see it.
I think Corey Knebel is going to be the closer out in Philly, dude. I really believe
that. So they have to re-sign him. That's the word right now.
He signed a 1 year, $10 million deal with the Phillies, buddy.
When?
Way before the lockout, dude. Been done deal.
Really? Yeah. Done deal. Okay, that's a great pick, man. I'm a big Corey Knebel fan. Absolutely, all day.
So I know they just signed, I think maybe Familia.
They did Familia right from the Mets.
But
they did a 1 year deal. Knebel's the guy. There's no question about it. Knebel's the guy. When Jansen was down a little bit, they inserted him a little with Tron in. He's the guy. He's got closer stuff. He's a good one. And I like his flexibility in starting pitching as well, if you want to put him in that slot.
It's definitely an interesting point, dude. Yeah, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah. So, I've done that before with him. He's a good one.
Yeah, my team's in an interesting place because, I mean, it really comes down to whether or not you view Michael Kopech as a true starter at this point.
I do. Listen, that's why they were the White Sox, I think, easy letting Rodon go, because I'm sure you saw Joe Kelly was signed by the White Sox yesterday.
Look, I did see that. It's a great signing.
It's insane. They're basically going to have a complete shutdown to wipe out bullpen, and Kopech's job is to start games now. It's his time. So it's what they traded for him, and I think he's going to have a bit of a breakout this year. He's got crazy stuff, no doubt about it. All right, so I would like to add to my bullpen a little bit. This is a guy right here, won the National League Rookie of the Year a couple years back. Devin Williams, like a fool, he broke his hand punching a wall last year, but he's healthy, he's fine, he's good to go for spring. He's not going to get a ton of saves because he pitches behind Josh Hader, but if Josh Hader gets traded, which is a possibility, Devin Williams is the guy, and when Josh Hader needs the night off, Devin Williams is the guy. He's got to wipe out stuff. Oh, Casey Mize, I like it, Brenden.
Got a young rotation, Daniel.
Yes, you do.
I got a young rotation, dude.
I like it, yeah. I like it.
We'll see, man. I don't know. We'll see how it pans out.
What do you think of Garrett Whitlock, Brendan?
Big
Do you think
fan.
he's going to be the man in Boston? I don't know.
Matt Barnes is still under contract, right?
He is, but he got beat up last year, man. He got really beat up towards the end of the year, and he was kind of. It's Whitlock obviously did not get the bulk of the opportunities really, but yeah, a lot of people.
I think this is the point of the draft where you kind of gotta pick and choose those battles, right? Like who's gonna win out on, because there's gonna be no clear star or closers left on the board at this point. Right. So I think you really just got to draw a line in the sand and say, hey, this guy's going to take that job and run with it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Huge flyer here, man.
It's not a bad flyer, dude. It's not a bad flyer at all.
I think I've already mentally gone into this at this point, understanding that I'm going to hit on a few and miss on a few in the pitching side of things. And I'm really hoping to rewind waivers at that point to figure it out. Probably short leash with some of these guys, but and then if it was rotisserie, for example, you cut that loose and you pick up whoever emerges for themselves as an elite bullpen arm, right? They keep that ERA and whip down. But yeah, I mean, at this point, I think it's kind of come down to just a balanced rotation, dude. The balance between relievers. I do think Knebel is going to be the closer. Kimbrel?
No, I mean, look,
the
White Sox, La Russa said they're not going to trade him. I don't believe that.
Did he say that? He came out and publicly said that?
Yeah, he came out and publicly said that. He said Kimbrel's going to be with the White Sox. Now, he didn't say to start the year. He just said Kimbrel's not going to be traded. But look, you're supposed to say that, right? If you go out and say, yeah, he's available, teams are going to not be as willing to give you, exactly what you want. You got to make people think. So to me,
like a true politician, man, that's a great point.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the way it works. Kimbrel, some team eventually is going to come call. At some point in July, he's going to get dealt, and he's probably going to pick up 15 saves at the minimum.
Well, and the other thing is, I mean, it's not like Hendricks is going to be the White Sox are going to win 110 games. It's not like Hendricks is going to go out there and get every save. So I mean, even if he picks up 8 to 10 saves for me. Right. 8 to 10 saves, that's a very valuable in the standings, dude. Very valuable. And I do think the guy's going to be nails, man. I do.
I agree.
Last year, I mean, he obviously had the midseason trade, did not look great in Chicago, but I think he'll settle into that 8th inning role just fine. And,
I agree. I agree. All right, so I filled up my offense, folks.
Nice.
We'll go over that. My 10 offensive slots, and this is really, guys, when you reach 10, when you reach all your offensive slots filled up, you want to look and say, okay, what's my team going to do? Because that's who you're going to go to battle with. Finish with 273 home runs projected, kind of where I want to be. 268 average, lower than where I'd like. Stolen bases, last in the league at 30, but I expected that. RBIs, 812. Would have liked a bit more. Runs scored, it has me last. So we'll see. We'll see when the draft finishes up what that equates to. Just a quick check-in. Kittredge, interesting one.
Kittredge and Fulmer, man. At this point, I'm gambling for the saves, but the reality is it's one thing to gamble for saves, which is kind of taking a flyer on somebody without understanding, the kind of stuff that comes with it. But both of those guys, I mean, Fulmer, watch those games with my own eyes, dude. The guy is throwing 100 miles an hour now. I mean, Kittredge, you see the ERA on the screen last year, 1.88, 0.98 whip. I mean, the guy's a little bit older. I mean, it was kind of his breakout season last year. He's a late bloomer.
Right.
You know how the Tampa Bay Rays do their bullpen. We'll see. But, I mean, if he can even get me 8 saves, 10 saves, I just need to try to find out a way to chisel those things together at this point without sacrificing too much, And I'm not concerned myself with what those guys are going to have in terms of the effect on my ERA, whip, strikeouts, all that kind of stuff. So
Right.
just kind of playing it safe at this point in the draft, you know.
I hear you. Drew Steckenrider, folks. He's a good one.
I think thinking is really the same as pretty much what I just summarized on your end, you know?
Yep. And the thing being also is Steckenrider's, I don't think Seattle is going to be committed to one guy. Last year, they certainly were not. But I do believe Steckenrider did finish with the most amount of saves there. Paul Sewald and Graveman was there. But Steckenrider's got good stuff, folks. I wish he struck people out a bit more, but his run suppression is great. We'll see. Bit of a wild card. He may blow up. But at this point in the draft, my 21st pick, he's somebody who's worth taking a flyer on. Mm-hmm. And I feel he's more than a flyer. I feel he's somebody who's got more upside than down. And who did you go with, Brenden?
Peter Fairbanks, man. Trying to catch the other half of that, the other half of that head. We'll see who wins it out. I mean, that's definitely a more risky pick than I want. I'm not going to lie to you. That's kind of a rushed pick in my opinion, but we'll see where it goes.
I like it, Joey Bart.
Huge flyer, right?
No, that is a good one. That is a good one. Adam Frazier, pick number 258.
Solid.
Definitely worth my second to last pick. He's going to be probably hitting either leadoff or the 2-hole in that revamped Mariners lineup. I think he's gonna have a good season up in the Pacific Northwest. David Fletcher, somebody just took. I like it. Mm-hmm. Chad Green, Yankee setup man. One of the two. My last pick in the draft. You went with Kendall Graveman, another setup man. Solid. He's not going to hurt you.
No bench bats, dude.
For who? You?
Me.
Yeah, I only took one, folks. I took one.
I think the reality is, dude, I realized halfway through, I was like, man, I'm just going to have to overcompensate on the pitching side because of what happened. So, plus, I do believe in pairings. I believe that that's an important thing. I think having Kendall Graveman and Craig Kimbrell, I think that what that's going to do for me is I'm going to pick up a lot of White Sox wins, Daniel. Having the 7th inning and the 8th inning of the White Sox locked down with Michael Kopech starting a couple games, dude, that's going to do wonders for me in the wins category.
Yeah.
Peter Fairbanks, we'll see a short leash on him, man. Very, 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 very short leash. But for whatever reason, dude, the Tampa Bay Rays management seems to trust him to close games. I don't know why that is. I've seen the stuff. The guy clearly he throws 100, but I think that's one guy who I would immediately sacrifice if he doesn't get off to a fast start.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I think it was one of those things where I decided to take a ton of flyers on the pitching side of the ball, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, no, I looked at your team. There's definitely a lot of flyers. Syndergaard and obviously Mize. This is going to be his second full season or second season in general. Did he come up during the COVID year or no?
He did. Yeah,
he did. Okay, so it's going to be a second full season, and like you just said, Fairbanks. I mean, Kittredge. He was solid. He was solid last year, no doubt. You got guys you can slot in and out of the starting pitching, relief pitching slots. Yeah, I definitely, I mean, look, right, we talked about having a bats and bullpen strategy. I mean, before we kind of talk about how your team does not reflect that, let's just talk about that bats and bullpen strategy.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, I mean, again, it really comes down to what this draft is tailored for, right? So when I'm looking at the standings right now, this draft is in Yahoo's eyes set up to be a head-to-head. So that's what this was drafting for. So that's what the literal category is. So the one thing obviously is they're not taking into account on the offensive side of the ball for me is that I don't have any bench bats. So my offensive stats are not accumulated to reflect that. Whereas if somebody, goes in on the offensive side of the baseball,
has 4 bench bats, they're going to have more home runs. They're going to have more RBIs.
Everything is going to be reflected in that. So
same thing for me. Correct.
If this was a rotisserie draft and each slot was locked on my side of the ball, then the offensive side of the ball, I bet you this placement would go up a little bit in terms of what Yahoo's doing. And also, I mean, I could drop pitchers at any point, dude. If Noah Syndergaard comes out,
exactly.
Nuked. I mean,
and that's why I think it's so important that once you reach your quota for your starting lineup, once you have those 10 starters, you say this is the team I'm going to battle with. It's important to look at what your numbers look like, right? Because any back you're adding afterwards, that guy's a replacement player essentially, right? If we're doing rotisserie, which is what we're doing here, folks, and we'll talk about head-to-head later, but for the most part, we believe rotisserie is the way to go. For rotisserie, these are the guys you're going to war with. These are the guys who are going to give you the numbers because you're not allowed to go over 162 games per position. Essentially, you can't do it. The game will, the system will stop counting stats once you break that, and people do it. And people, they may have the lead.
It's a rookie
3 weeks
mistake.
To go.
It's a rookie mistake. Me and Daniel are acutely aware of that.
Yeah, we see it all the time. You know, so don't look at it, the standings and say, okay, Brendan's team has what right now it has you pegged as home runs.
Let's look at the screen, dude. Let's look at the screen. I mean, if you look at WHIP, I mean, I'm right there, man. I mean, it's great.
Let's just stay on offense for a second, right? Because that's what we're talking about, right? We're talking about how you don't have bench bats, right? They have you as having the fewest home runs. We know that's not true, right? We know you're not going to finish anywhere close to last because
George Springer, Mike Trout, Freeman, Tim Anderson.
Let's do the math. Let's add it up, right? Let's add it up. How many home runs should that lineup produce for you if we're going by Yahoo's rough, calculus?
Let's go to the team.
Right.
Yeah, I was looking at your team. Interesting. You clearly punted on a solo basis, but I mean, hey.
Oh, absolutely.
It has to. I mean,
you can't
see, and then there you go, right there. It doesn't even have Joey Bart starting in the majors, so that's already going to drag it down. 0 home runs. We know we're not going to get 0 home runs out of that catcher spot.
Right.
It's just, I mean, even if I pick up a bench catcher, or I can make a trade in the middle of the season for an elite catcher.
Right.
Anything could happen, dude. From there, I mean, I would argue that slot will end the year at 20. I mean, if Joey starts,
look. They have Kalenic down for only 481 at bats. We know he's not going to get 481 at bats. He's probably going to get close to 600 and something because he's going to be starting the year with the Mariners.
Right.
This isn't a guy. Their math
again. Mike Trout 8 home runs. What is that?
Well, that's what it was for last year. So they have projected for 33, but at the same time, I would tell you that's low because he's not gonna. If all his health issues are fine, he's gonna get way more than 425 at bats. That's the thing to keep in mind. Let's assume Trout is perfectly healthy. He's gonna have a normal year, a normal Mike Trout year. He's probably gonna have the same amount of at bats as Freddie Freeman. Freddie Freeman had 591. Let's say Trout has 550. That's 125 at bats more than what they have projected for. That's probably at least 7 to 8 home runs more. So you got to keep that in mind that these numbers that they're projecting are really just not accurate.
No,
they're very rough baseline numbers. Don't allow yourself to say, "Hey, I thought I had a good strategy, but this is what the computer spat out." No. That you got to read between the lines, and that's what we hope we can give you some context for, right? Like right there, I think we just showed it. You can't just look at us and say, "Oh, Mike Trout, 33 home runs." No, that's not the case. If I put money on it, he's breaking 40. As long as that calf is healthy, which is the great question. I think he's fine from what it sounds like. I think at minimum he's going to hit 40 home runs. So Jazz Chisholm, he's another guy, right? They have him at 480 at bats. He's going to hit leadoff for the Miami Marlins most likely. You think he's only going to have 480? It's basing it off of the games he missed because of injury last year.
Yeah.
Right? It's a saying, okay, if he got injured last year, he's going to get injured this year. No, it doesn't work like that. So Jazz Chisholm is probably going to hit over 25, 26 home runs. He's probably going to steal closer to 30 bases, not 23 bases. So, I mean, it's so important to be aware of these things when one does the autopsy of the teams we drafted. But overall, though, with that in mind, Brenden, how do you feel about your team?
I don't feel great about it. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I mean, I think I just did the math. So you're projected to hit about 60 more home runs than me. Yeah, I could see. I mean, again,
I went for power.
Right. Exactly.
I punted on steals. I punted on batting average for the most part. And I went straight to hit the ball. I wanted to play home run derby.
Well, and that's the strategy that we talked about on it at times, because especially when you go pitching, when you go on the pitching side of the baseball, you can't build a 5-category offensive team with pick 100 plus and beyond. It's just not going to be possible. So, I mean, I think for my team, it came in a little bit lighter on the power than I would have loved, but I'm hoping that, when I look at the averages across the board that it spat out at me, I feel very comfortable with average. I don't think Jazz Chisholm's going to hit 244. I can see 260, 270. And if you bump that up, I mean, the fact that he's my lowest average on there. Yeah, I mean, I could easily make Jared Clank, if he starts to struggle really bad out of the gate, I could make an adjustment in season and get a guy like maybe Kike Hernandez in there who'd hit 280 or something like that. I feel very comfortable with the average for my team. Stolen bases, it's clear that I don't know if I got the job done, Daniel, on the stolen bases side of things. And I think that would be something that come back and bite me. But
it goes back to what we said right at the beginning of your draft. When you take Mike Trout and Freddie Freeman back to back, you are head and shoulders above everybody else in 4 categories. I mean, you can't get a better foundation. However, Mike Trout's not 25 years old anymore, right? And it's very possible that he's going to steal the same amount of bases as Freddie Freeman. So, I mean, that's the fundamental question, right? Like, for me, if I go offense, I have to have a base stealer. As tempting as it is to have Freeman and Trout. But folks, and that's what you'll see when we do the auction draft. You can do that. You could have Freeman and Trout. But if you do a snake, I don't know, Brenden. As sexy as it is, it's almost like, no, you just can't do it because Tim Anderson's not enough.
See, he's not enough. I look at this team and, there's a couple of things that stand out to me. I think that I have enough foundational pillars in there to make a serious run at it, but I do know that this is a team that would need multiple adjustments heading into the actual season. I think that because I was confused on the pitching side, what I did mid-draft and the decision that clicked in my head is I was like, well, I'm going to choose some starting pitchers, but I'm also going to have a fallback option to build a bullpen. And that's what you see here. So, like, really, whatever side of this pitching comes out, if my bullpen starts to turn its nails, maybe I get 1 or 2 starting pitchers that make sense. Maybe I make a trade to shore up my catcher position. Maybe I make a trade to get another closer in there. But there's definitely adjustments that will be needing to be made to my team to officially go all the way. I think that's the bottom line. But yeah, I feel very comfortable with your pitching staff, dude. You did a good job.
Listen, I mean, I have done so many of these mocks with pitching because pitching has always been very intriguing to me because it is I was saying, elite starting pitching is even more rare than, then let's just call it good closers. Because in my view, there's like 3 elite closers, Hader, Hendricks, and Iglesias. But elite starting pitching, the value that can give you, because it can give you 4 categories versus, say, elite closers, it's more valuable to me. So I think if you can make a run on elite starting pitching from the gun, as soon as that shot goes off, and you saw of my first 5 picks, 4 of them were starting pitchers. I'm head and shoulders ahead of everybody else in pitching. I don't even have to have the best closers ERA whip wise because the amount of innings I'm getting out of Corbin freaking Burns and Walker freaking Bueller and Robbie Cy Young Ray and Max Fried, it'll carry me. I just need some saves, and you can have Will Smith, who doesn't have to be the sexiest closer. I mean, I think, who did I get as my first closer? Ryan Presley. I mean, look, he's great. He's great. He's right after Iglesias. But yeah, no, my pitching I felt great with. And if you saw their 2021 rankings, I finished first. My team would have finished a little bit better. My offense, look, that is a great question. Can you get enough, right? I think I got the home runs I wanted. I certainly finished last in stolen bases. Surprisingly, I finished like 3rd or 4th in batting average. I was surprised by that.
That was a great question to me when I was looking at it.
Yeah, and that's where a guy
really
like
count
Michael
on Josh Donaldson. Can you really
well,
count
Josh
on
Donaldson was my bench bat. He was my bench bat. He was my one bench bat.
Okay, sure.
But my last pick before Donaldson to roll out the lineup was Brantley, right?
Yeah.
And Brantley's, if you look at his numbers the last 4 years, Brendan,
No, 300 big Michael Brantley guy. That's
300 batting
average. You're drafting
average.
Michael Brantley for average. That's what you draft.
Exactly. I don't care about powers. I don't care if he hits 10 home runs. Last year he only hit 8, but he hits 300 like it's his job, because it is.
Especially if the shift is gone. Not this year, bro.
Well, yeah. I mean, next year the shift will be gone. This year, but it doesn't matter. He can hit anybody. I mean,
I agree.
What he did, I mean, I saw him just poke balls through the holes against the Braves in the World Series. I mean, he's a professional hitter, but I think that there's enough power out there, right? Because we play, it's like the NFL, it's an offensive game. There are always receivers out there grabbing yards. You can get those guys in baseball. You tell me, I mean, is this a good analogy? Because you play a lot of fantasy football. Would you consider like power hitters, like wide receivers? Like there are guys out there who are just going to just rack up yards left and right.
I would say that's definitely a fair comparison for sure. I mean,
right?
I think, especially once you hit the middle of the season and injuries start to take place and guys step in and stuff like that, for sure, a fair comparison.
Yeah, I just think power is abundant, right? I think the most precious things
definitely more abundant than steals. Definitely more abundant.
Offensively, stolen bases are gold, and if I decide to go starting pitching, you just got to punt, and sometimes it's okay. You don't have to finish first in every category or third in every category. I mean, if I finish last in stolen bases, but I'm finishing third in home runs and third in RBIs and fourth in runs, and I'm sweeping pitching, game over. So but you and I both know this, though. With starting pitching, there is an X factor of risk, which is health, which is injury. That is the great risk to starting pitchers. And you don't have the same prevalency of injury with hitters. I mean, it can happen. Don't get me wrong. It happened to you last year, for sure. Mike Trout, Luis Robert. Who else got hurt for you last year? Corey Seager. Yeah, both of us.
List goes on, man.
List goes on. But I mean, look, I think everything's a risk in life and in baseball and in fantasy. I just think if you can corner the market on starting pitchers, if all things are equal with health, you have an advantage. But you got to have the stomach to risk the risk of injury.
Yeah, I mean, I think if anything, this just solidifies for me how much I don't like snake drafts.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. That
like
leads
snake drafts, dude.
Oh,
we'll see. We'll see. The next episode will be an auction draft, but and I think everything will be a lot different. But if you truly ask me, like if I had to go to war with that team, I think that I could fix it enough to place, but I don't know about first place, man.
No, I mean, I've played with you enough, and I've played enough now. I just think there were too many. You had to start audibling really early in that draft, and then you started taking flyers way too soon. I think just trying to piece it together. It's like you said. I think what happened was you got Hader at what pick, Brendan?
4th pick, which is totally fair.
Totally.
41st overall.
I think I was surprised. I mean, because I've seen you draft now enough. I was surprised you didn't get another closer with your 5th or at least your 6th pick.
The offensive foundation: Mike Trout, Freddie Freeman, Tim Anderson, George Springer. Throw Corey Seager in there. I mean, I think once the season actually started, I didn't have faith in that offense. Honestly, it's a decent offense. I mean, but
no, it's a good offense. The problem is, though,
it's not great. It's not a great offense, exactly.
Not just that.
Steals also.
It's a two-way game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we said, and if you're pitching,
there's a lot of flyers out there on the pitching side.
Yeah, if your pitching has no identity and no plan to it, right? What does it matter if you have the best offense? Like your offense could have been even better than that, but if your pitching is just a hodgepodge of things, a hope and a prayer, like it's not going to matter, right? So like I think that's the thing about a snake is that it forces you to have to make those hard decisions.
Yeah, for sure.
And sometimes you're having to do them with players that you really don't want to make the decisions with.
I think it just comes full circle to what we were talking about when the draft first started. It's much easier in an auction draft to implement the strategy that you're going for. Whereas snake, I mean, the strategy just wouldn't have made sense. If I started taking relief pitchers in round 7, that would have gone in round 10. It just doesn't make the value for the picks wouldn't have been there enough to make sense. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, like that's something I've learned, right? Is like sometimes people, like I used to be somebody who used to see a draft board, see my selection choice, and then see a player that maybe I was interested in, and I was like, oh well, I'm taking him way too soon, right? He's not worth this pick. Like
sometimes, it is worth it though.
Sometimes it is. Like I took Max Fried 15 slots right before his average draft pick because I had to get him.
Mm-hmm.
I have to go get that guy because I've seen it happen too many times where if I let him slip past round 5, he's not there round 6.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I've seen him there round 7, especially when I've gotten bats and ignored starting pitching. But you don't know what's going to happen on a given day.
Right.
You just don't know. Like you and I have seen closer runs happen really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Really quickly. Like I've gotten caught with my pants down.
Oh, yeah.
And I've gotten caught with my pants down too many times that I'm never letting it happen again.
Oh, totally. Especially once the auction draft rolls around.
I mean, I would have
like I said, I do think it's valuable to do both, but I'm an 80-20 guy, man. 80% auction all day.
Yeah, I think when we show people an auction draft, I think your team certainly is going to look dramatically different.
Oh, of course.
But I just think you can do things with a bit more certainty, and you're really not ending up taking players you don't want. How many times in this draft do you think you took a player that you really didn't want, Brenden?
At least 5.
Yeah, that's the number I had in my head.
At least 5, yeah.
Yeah, for me, it was like,
for you? Yeah.
Maybe like twice. I'm looking at my draft board. I'm trying to see the first player I took that I wasn't really like happy taking.
Yeah, it just seems when I was on the board, like the player that I wanted would get picked, like literally the pick directly before or 2 picks before.
Oh, it happens. It happened to me.
And I'll say this too. I mean, doing this, like with obviously the podcast tied in, there was a couple of times there where like we were engaged in a conversation. I wasn't looking at the draft board all too much. And so when that would happen, I would literally have no clear backup plan. So that was definitely an observation I had from this. But that's what these mocks are for.
Absolutely. Look,
that's
honestly, like, what can go wrong, what does go wrong has as much value as what can go right and what does go right.
100%.
Like for me, this draft, it came out exactly like I imagined it. I said to myself, if I'm going starting pitching, I need to have 4 elite starting pitchers that I trust giving the ball to every day against any team in baseball. I don't care where they're pitching, who they're facing.
I think for your team, the big question marks are obviously like saves is definitely still a question mark I have.
No, I finished first in saves, Brenden. I finished first in saves. I did. Yeah, I finished. I tied.
So who's your closers again?
Ryan Presley, Kenley Jansen, Will Smith. Those were my 3 closers, my 3 primary closers. And then I had Devin Williams as my setup guy. So I think they had him racking up like 4 or 5 saves. And then I had Lucas Sims, who I think he's a bit of a wild card, but he's somebody who, folks, if you haven't seen him pitch, he's got wipeout stuff. He's got an unhittable slider. He was the Cincinnati Reds closer after last season. Do you remember? They went into spring training with the question of, is it going to be Sims or Chapman? Remember that?
Amir Garrett.
And what's that?
Amir Garrett.
Chapman. Amir Garrett, right? Lefty reminds me of Chapman. Wishes he was. And Chapman melted down, and I wore that around my neck for like 3 months. Lucas Sims became the guy, and then he got hurt, and they pitched him while he was hurt a little bit, so his ERA was a little inflated. But he's the guy they want to be the closer. What's their coach, the manager's name, Bell or whatever, kind of alluded to Lucas Sims being the guy again this year. He's going to be given the chance to be the closer. They want some certainty with that Cincinnati bullpen.
Yeah.
So he's somebody. I mean, I remember when he got drafted by the Braves. He was a first-round pick by Atlanta. So I've tracked him his whole life, his whole career. He's somebody I can end up cutting. Right, he's somebody who may not be
flyer, dude, for sure.
But he's the kind of guy that, hey, if Cincinnati says you're a guy,
I think it's a fair chance. I mean, who else is in that bullpen?
They have a few guys,
that are really going to take over the closer role. I don't see it.
Yeah, like they have guys they
want. A fair shot in the dark.
Yeah, Sims is the guy. He's the guy who should be that man getting first crack. And if you just look at his strikeout numbers, I mean, he has an exceptional K to 9. So, and then I have Steckenrider. Again, he picked up about a dozen saves. I had him last year.
This year, though, man. They have Paul Sewald. I mean, they have some other guys coming out, though.
Even if he picks up 5 to 10 saves, right?
Standings for sure.
He's going to pick up some wins. Listen,
I think if anything, again, it comes back to the late round draft. Like, he's a bullpen guy where there's not too many question marks. Like, he's not going to pitch to a tune of a 5 ERA, which is at the end of the day, that's what you want to get.
And you got to keep this in mind about that Seattle pitching staff. Seattle is one of those teams, their pitching is going to be ridden by their bullpen. They don't have, other than Robbie Ray and Marco Gonzalez a little bit, like it's a young pitching staff. Very few outings are you going to get 7 innings. They're going to rely on that bullpen. Steckenrider is going to pick up, 5 to 6 wins probably. So he's going to get you 5 to 6 wins, maybe 10 to 12 saves. Again, he's another guy that if it ain't looking great, go insert Tyler Matzik or AJ Minter from the Braves and pick up wins and strikeouts there. But my 3 horses, and that's my belief, Brenden, is I don't think you need more than 3. If you can get elite, like, I don't want to say, again, elite, but if you can get, bona fide closers, like, it's his job. Like, he would have to basically piss on the mound to lose the job. Kenley Jansen, Ryan Presley, Will Smith. Right there, that's over 100 saves. Right there, just in those 3 guys. And then you just, you see what happens with Lucas Sims and Steckenrider. But, yeah, I mean, I don't have a 6 starting pitcher. My belief is that you want to have 6 starters, 5 relievers. Sometimes that's not going to happen. I would rather have an extra reliever than risk it on a 6 starter who's not worth it. The thing to keep in mind is that there's an innings limit of 1,400, right? You can't go over it, but you don't want to finish underneath it. I'd have to look at the innings. I think I'm probably a little bit under 1,400. Sometimes, you don't need to max it out. Like, I don't think you've maxed out your innings sometimes, but if you can, and it means the difference between first and second place and strikeouts, I would do it, as long as it's not going to move you negatively in ERA and WHIP, right? Why go up in one category 1 point and lose a point in 2 categories, right? That doesn't make sense. So if I know it's not going to risk ERA and WHIP, I'll try to get some more innings. But if I think I'm going to lose a point in ERA and WHIP, just moving up 1 spot in strikeouts or wins is not worth it.
Yeah.
So I think you got to have at least 5 starters. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
4 of them have to be elite.
Well, I mean, I think overall, dude, it's both of our teams had a fair chance of doing something in that draft, but definitely looking forward to the auction next time around. And what we'll do is we'll put both teams up and let us know which one you guys think would do better. And we're going to try to keep pumping out some content for you here. And thanks for watching if you're still here all the way through. And
Yeah, appreciate it.
Hopefully you took away some fantasy insights. That's at the end of the day. So,
all right.
Any last thoughts, Daniel?
My last thoughts are there are a lot of different ways to skin a cat. There's not, one supreme strategy. I think you have to be you have to be ready to improvise. The draft is one, like we'll talk about this more. It's one foundation of your strategy.
Yeah.
As I'm sure you'll talk about more, there are multiple other elements to it. But I think when you do a draft, the last thought I'll say is this. I want to do a draft with as many pieces that I feel good about as possible. I really don't want to have more than 3 or 4 flyers. I know that in many years and many teams can end up looking drastically different than the team you drafted, but that's not the approach I want to have. I want to try to go into a draft with as many foundational pieces as possible that I say are going to be there to the end of the year. Now, if I trade them, I trade them, but I don't want to. I want to avoid as much as possible pieces that I see myself, and I could see myself, strongly cutting eventually at some point.
Yeah.
That's my thought.
For sure. All right, guys. Well, thanks for tuning in. Leave a like, and we'll see you next time.
See you guys.